Hey guys, welcome back. Today we got a really interesting video. I got coached by 3 of the biggest wildlife coaches out there, and in this video I'm going to break down everything you might want to know before ordering a coaching session. And let's be honest, no matter how good you are, you can always get better, right? As you all know, I'm considered one of the best mechanical Blitzcrank players, but am I macro-wise? Not really. So today we're gonna see what I improved and what each coach taught me and whether this coaching were actually worth it. I will rate every detail and give my personal honest opinion both about coaching and in general about each coach. So firstly, let's talk about who my coaches were. These were my 3 coaches, but let's start from Kerxx, better known as Riftwitz on YouTube channel. He's a former professional player and still an insane mechanical and macro player. He proves it with multiple sovereign accounts and all of them with very high win rates. He was rank 1 in EU from legendary queue and probably even rank wise, I don't remember it actually. But honestly talking, if you ask the best EU players, they all gonna tell you, 90% of them are gonna tell you that Kerxx is one, if not the best macro players and macro mindset on this server. Knowing all of this, I had to ask him for a coaching. Also, quickly disclaimer, me and Kerxx already know each other and we have done some videos together and some projects together. Anyways, let's go to the second coach. The second coach is gonna be Talan. Talan is a 5-time sovereign in an A on the same season and with 5 different roles. If I'm not mistaken, he even reached sovereign once while being fully auto-filled, and the most impressive thing about him is he reached rank 1 in an A as solo queue player, which is really insane because normally people reach it in duo queue or trio queue. He also been legend multiple times, and at this point he doesn't really need to prove anything else, right? So on top of that, he already gives free macro and micro coaching on his YouTube videos, which clearly show his knowledge. And as last, but definitely not least, Royal. Honestly, I don't think I even need to introduce him. He got rank 1 legend in an A, rank 1 legend in Europe, and even rank 1 probably in both ranked modes. For sure in an A, I'm not sure about EU, but definitely got sovereign in both servers. Royal openly presents himself as the best wildlife players, so getting coaching by him was an absolute must. So now that you know the coaches, let's get to the juicy part. Who was better? What did I actually learn? Was it worth it? And most importantly, how much did each coaching cost? I'm going to go way more in depth than this overview, so you'll find timestamps in the description. Let's start with something simple. The response time. Who answered faster? This one is a bit tricky because I contacted all of them during Christmas holidays, so keep that in mind. Kerxx replied in just 2 minutes after my message. Now to be fair, we were already friends on Discord, so he probably saw it faster, but still, that's an insanely fast reaction. That guy is basically 24/7 online. It's crazy. For me it's a 10 out of 10, he responded instantly, which is the best case scenario, while Talan replied after 14 hours, and honestly, that's still crazy fast. In my opinion, if you ask for a coaching, waiting up to 24 hours is completely normal. What matters more is how fast they answer after the first reply, and Talan was basically instantly every time. So even though Kerxx was a world record holder, Talan also get a 10 out of 10 because he was really fast at answering. While Royal replied after 23 hours, which is still within the 24 hours window. He told me he had missed the message, and that's completely fair. But to be honest, his response time is totally fine, but since we are evaluating everything, I'll give him a 9 out of 10, just because the others were slightly faster. Anyways, that said, once the conversation started, Royal answered instantly every time, exactly like Talan. So let's go to the first impression now. All three were really nice and flexible with the schedule. However, here's something important to say. Kerxx actually refused to coach me. He told me that he knows me too well and that my playstyle is already perfectly optimized for my own way of playing. He said changing it would require a complete mindset reset and that coaching me would probably make me worse instead of make me better. So basically, my playstyle is very unique and resolves around hard pushing weaker players, and even in high elo it's working because nowadays high elo is filled with bad players. So I will give his reaction a 7 out of 10, not because he was wrong, but because even then macro coaching is still valuable and I should be the one deciding if I want to apply it or not. That said, he coached me a year ago in one of his videos, so I'll still evaluate him later. While both Talan and Roya were instantly interested and asked about my availability, saying that they would adapt to my schedule, which is a 10 out of 10 for both. Now let's go on prices. So Kerxx takes 30 euro if you are a Zo member, while if you are not a Zo member, then it takes 50 euro. Talan takes $25, which is about 21 euros, and Royal takes $75, which is about 64 euros. I won't rate prices directly because value depends on what you actually get. Instead, I'll judge quality and quantity relative to the price. So now let's break the coaching. From here, the video goes deep into jungle tracking, laning phase decision making, objective tempo, recalls, playstyle adaptation, and aggression versus consistency. I will compare what each coach focused on and what actually improved my gameplay, what I still disagree with, and who fits my playstyle the best. At the end, I will show you a final comparison graphic and tell you which coaching I'd preferably recommend depending on what kind of player you are. So yeah, let's get into the real analysis. And to keep things fair, I try to get coached on the same gameplay by all coaches, but of course on Kerxx was hard because it was of last year. So Talan and Roy are gonna coach me on the same gameplays while Kerxx has a different gameplay, but we're gonna value even his coaching because I have to follow my goals, which are understanding what each coach focus on, how they teach, and how useful their advice are in real games. So I'm not here to say that one coach is objectively better than the other. This is about what worked for me, so it's for my personal playstyle and my personal experience. So from now on, I will break down each coach separately on what they pointed out, what I agree with them, what I don't agree with them, and what I actually applied in Ranked. Then at the end, I'll put everything together and give you a final comparison about every coach and my opinion. So now, let's start with Kerxx. Sadly, the replay he coached me was different, because it was a coaching of last year that I have to took from his YouTube channel, but we're gonna still value him. And sadly, I wanted to make everyone having the same coaching for having perfectly best advice from everyone on the same gameplay, but sadly wasn't possible with Kerxx. So that said, the advice he gave me was still extremely valuable and probably the most useful I'm still using in game right now. So the first big thing he focused on was jungle tracking, where he explained to me how to read the enemy jungle's tempo, whether they start blue or red, and how to predict their pathing, just by watching your own jungler and adjusting timings by a few seconds based on who is faster. That's simple but very effective. Another major point he was giving me was my laning phase. He told me to play way more in bushes instead of fair play in outside, and honestly, this might be the best advice I ever got on Blitzcrank, because I thought staying in a bush was making the enemy scared of me and not walking up. But actually, they still walk up because they don't know if I rotated, either I still there. So they still walk up and get hooked. Meanwhile, if I play fair and play outside the bushes, I can hook between the minion, that's true, but they are gonna be more scared and playing for last hitting from maximum range, and that's not gonna help the laning phase. He also told me to deep ward enemy jungle, especially because of my playstyle that involves tower dives. Standard wards normally are in the tree bush for spotting ganks and when mid laner is gonna rotate to your lane, but deep wards are close to the red buff or to the blue buff, so that you see them still doing camps, and gives earlier information, help you prepare escapes, and let you decide if it's a risky play or if it's actually worth it. It don't helps you with mid lane rotation, but you should just watch them up and see mid lane missing. Once laning phase is over, he told me to use rotations to create pressure for towers and objectives, not just for kills. Kills are nice, but tempo wins the games. So, off coaching, I even asked him how to play in legendary queue, where my ADC is not winning the lane. And what he told me was, basically, if your ADC is bad, ignore them, rotate on every recall and play for whoever is winning. After applying this in my legendary queue, where I had 39% win rate, the lowest win rate out of all sovereigns, I went up to 56 and am right now close to legend. So that alone made the coaching worth it. I got so much better by just leaving an ADC, which I never thought about. Now let's move on Talan. First of all, quickly disclaimer, I didn't organize the recording perfectly, so unfortunately I hear only Talan's voice from my recording. Mine is missing. That's a shame, but the important part is still there, his advice. So what I did was cut all the unnecessary parts and keep every moment where he actually gives a tip. And then I'll give you my opinion on each one. Starting from the laning phase, where Talan told me pushing the waves early to get fast level 2 will create more pressure and kill opportunities. And here, I have to be honest, I strongly disagree. I'm pretty sure Talan doesn't really play Blitzcrank, because if you do, you know how often enemies escape with 1 HP versus Blitzcrank. If I hard push the wave, I get poked a lot, first of all. Second, I still need 4 minions plus 1 of the second wave for getting the level 2, and the enemy duo will still sit under tower hitting minions. So I completely disagree with Talan because that kills Blitzcrank pressure. I tried to explain this to him, but he still believed that the kill pressure was there. That's his opinion and that's fair, but I don't agree with it, so I'm just being transparent with you guys. After that, he gave me a really good jungle tracking advice, similar to the concept of Kerxx, but Talan explained it with clear timings and making it much easier to apply. Depending on where the jungle starts, possible ganks can come at 150, either at 230, depending on what buff he started on. Then he goes back to his first buff around 230, and at his second buff around 345, and back to his first buff at 5 minutes. That was super useful and it definitely made me more aware of ganks. He also pointed out that most of my dives are all ints, while my jungler is close to us, doing his camps. His recommendation in this case is pinging my jungler, waiting for him, and committing for a much safer dive. To be fair, that's a really good advice, but for my playstyle, I still don't fully agree with it. Me and Samira don't like jungle ganks, unless they are absolutely necessary. Most of the times they take gold and XP and waste tempo of the jungle and hour, so it's just a misplay to dive. So still the advice is really good objectively, but I don't fully agree with it. But let's go to the mid game where Talan shined. This is where Talan really impressed me. He told me focus on outer turrets between minutes 6 and 11 and set up deep vision, so that we prepare the map for the Baron at minute 11. He kept repeating something very important: objectives and towers are always more worth chasing kills. And this leads to the best advice he gave me. He noticed that because I chase plays too much, I often either recall too late, miss objective, or arrive late while my teamfight is already fighting. So he told me to recall 30 or 40 seconds before every major objective like Baron or Drake's Soul, and honestly, he's completely right about that. I noticed it myself. I never thought about it before, but it's a huge tempo advantage, and more importantly, it protects your team from fighting without you and probably inting. This advice alone was for me game changing. As his final point, classic Kerxx style, he told me to not take Drakes just because. Don't play for a hypothetical soul, use Drake as a bait. If you're winning, force enemies to check and fight them, and then, in that case, take the Drake. If no fight happens, ignore the Drake and take towers, jungle camps, and in case Herald. Drakes are only really worth if there was a fight. Overall, I really enjoyed talking to Talan, and I had high expectations which he mostly met. But we'll talk about final scores later. Now let's move on to Royal. This was probably the most hyped coaching considering both the price and his reputation. So the big question was, is it actually worth the price? Is he the best? Let's see. Royal reviewed the same two gameplays that I sent to Talan. Right away, his laning phase advice was already basically the opposite of Talan. He told me that with Blitz, it's better to let enemies push slightly because your hook threat is higher near to your tower, you can safely proc your relic shell twice and still reach level 2 before enemy. I completely agree with this, and that's actually my playstyle. He also told me to hold my hook unless it's a guaranteed hit. Just having the hook already creates pressure, and that alone can win lanes. Royal touched a bit of jungle tracking too, but not in detail like Talan. I assume that's because he knew I'm a sovereign and expected me to already know the basics. To be fair, it's true, but he should still think about that maybe that's my issue. Anyways, he's really good at adapting to my playstyle. What I really liked about Royal is that he didn't try to change who I am as a player. He actually tried to perfectionate my playstyle, which I really liked and I appreciate from him. For example, Kerxx and Talan both pointed out correctly that I greed and dive when the enemy jungler might be nearby. Royer approached it differently. Instead of saying you shouldn't dive here, he said up to this minute it's fine to trade aggressively even if you die, because the tempo lost is not a big issue. His logic was, yes, the enemy jungler gets fed, but we get fed too. And we are 2 versus 1. And our power spike can still carry the game. Now, objectively speaking, Kerxx and Talan are right. Their approach is safer and makes the game easier for your team. But this isn't a 5Q man, it's a legendary queue or a duo queue, where sometimes taking the risky plays for yourself is worth it. I'm not going to change my playstyle, I love diving, but my takeaway was, keep diving but add deep wards, so I know how the dive will probably end before committing it. Other big advice that Royal told me was during recalls to check other lanes, see who needs help, and use my tempo to punish enemies without spells, so checking if they flashed, checking if they ulted, and checking if they are killable. He also noticed that something really important, I often forget to fully stack my relic shield stacks. That's true, I noticed it myself, and fixing that alone gives you earlier power spikes. After that, Royer noticed that both my gameplays was kinda stomping, so he added me 2 more gameplays to coaching. It was really nice from him noticing that, and I really appreciate that he gave me 2 more sessions for free, but I don't know if that would happen with everyone. Of course, if you're a low elo and you have a worse gameplay, that's gonna take more time for him to review, and most likely he's not gonna give you 4 gameplays, so I don't even knew how to value that. Anyways, the 2 new gameplays I sent to him were a solo queue on Sovereign and a legendary queue at higher elo where I was close to Immortal. And there he focused more on my greediness, on my bad recall timings, and on my wasting tempo. He also told me something important about trading. He told me if I die but my ADC gets the kill, it's always worth it. But if my ADC dies and I get the kill, it's almost never worth it. Another point that he pointed out is to never die for a support kill, and usually not even for an ADC kill. His reasoning is support for support trades are neutral, it's completely useless. Support for ADC trades feed the enemy ADC, which, to be fair, in early game it's true, he's gonna get your 400 gold and you're not gonna get that much, but in late game it's probably good, because you waste his tempo and he's probably not gonna do the 400 golds. But anyways, even after speaking with Royal about this, he was still sure about the fact that killing an ADC 1-for-1 in late game, it's still worse than surviving. I let this to you guys because in my opinion it's worth it, but in his opinion isn't. It's fine, these are opinions. That said, there was one thing he was absolutely right about. Sometimes I could save my ADC instead of trading kills, where I don't. That's something I need to work on, because I normally focus on killing enemy ADC more than protecting mine. Well, now that you've seen what each coach focused on, we can finally start the real questions. Who gave the most useful advice? Who adapted best to my playstyle? And which coach is actually worth your money? But before, we have to rate everything. Let's start to talk about what I think were the best and the worst part of each coaching, and who performed better for my personal playstyle and gameplay. On screen right now, you can see the graphic with all the questions that actually matters in a coaching, what I learned and what I still need to work on. Starting with the type of coaching. Honestly, all three are kinda similar, but not exactly the same. In my case, and also from another coaching I've seen, Kerxx does something different. He records a full video explaining everything and pointing out mistakes using his famous magic pen. On the other hand, Talan and Royal both did a Discord call, reviewing the gameplay live while talking directly to me. I'll give this type of coaching a 8 out of 10. Being able to talk directly with the coach is super helpful. You can explain your thoughts and questions. But at the same time, the coach is a human, not a robot. And over time, some things might be forgotten, especially if the player makes many mistakes. That's why I would recommend both Talan and Royal to do something similar to Kerxx. Record the session while being in the call, and if possible, use a magic pen to visual show mistakes. Once the video is over, seeing the mistake drawn on the screen makes everything easier to understand. For Kerxx, I would suggest the opposite. Keep the video style, but also do the coaching while being in a call, so that the player can explain what they were thinking at the moment. In the two coaching I know of Kerxx, this didn't happen, but I don't have enough data to be sure since he refused to coaching me. If Kerxx doesn't do the direct calls, I would give his style a 7 out of 10, because you lose the chance to understand the player's mindset. That said, the ratings are a bit irrelevant. It's mostly about coaching style, and all three might make their style work perfectly. So now let's move on. Number of sessions. So I would count Talan as a 1 session, Kerxx as a half session in my case, and Royal as a 2 session. But to be fair, all of these should count as 1. I really doubt that Royal normally does 2 sessions for 1 payment. He did it because my gameplays were stomping, and I appreciate it a lot. But let's count everyone as a 1-hour session. So starting from that point, all three respected the time they promised. Royal even went over time, staying after the second session to answer me my questions. That's a 10 out of 10 for all of them. Doing the full time they promised is actually good for a coaching. Now let's do a little recap just to be clear. All coaches reached the max elo and rank 1 at some point. My rank is the highest elo and top 10 at my peak. And the role they coached on was support, or actually just for Blitzcrank. The patch the coaching was made was the 6.3F. And now let's move on. How useful was the coaching? To be fair, all 3 coachings give me new informations that I should care about. But overall, what did I actually learn? So, from Kerxx, I learned the most about my champion. Even as a Blitzcrank OTP, his mindset is better than mine. He showed me the things that I never thought about. The biggest one was playing around bushes, instead of playing fair and still visible to the enemies. I always thought being visible would scare enemies more, make them back off minions and lose XP. But in reality, playing from bushes is way stronger. Enemies start doubting if I recall it, if I rotate it, or if I'm still there. That uncertainty makes them overthink and misplay. This is definitely what I abuse the most in Ranked, and in Legendary Queue, something no one ever told me, sometimes leaving your ADC 1v2 actually makes them play better. When they are alone, they know they can't overcommit, so they just last hit safely. When you're there, they think they have a kill pressure and they die. Crazy but true, at least at low elo. For all of this, I give Kerxx a 9 out of 10. He really studied my champion and gave me advice I will use every single day. He also gave jungle tracking advice, but that's harder to apply and less immediately impactful. Talan, on other hand, gave me clear timings. Thanks to him, I now read jungle position much easier and I'm way more aware of ganks. But the best advice he gave me was recalling earlier before objectives, so that my team doesn't fight without me. That's honestly game changing. What I didn't like, but I still respect as a knowledge, was his advice on pushing lane. I don't know if it's because he doesn't play Blitzcrank or because of dual lane mechanics, but you always need 4 plus 1 minion for level 2, as Blitz pushing is hard. You get poked a lot and you destroy your kill pressure. Letting enemies push and denying them the first minion and the second wave is almost always better. That said, if you have a weak early ADC or a scaling one, pushing is fine, especially in Legendary Queue, because it protects you from ganks. So I'll still use this advice situationally. Overall, I would still give Talan an 8 out of 10, because his macro knowledge is insane. He's very good with numbers and he explains everything perfectly. The thing is, macro becomes useful only once you really understand it, while champion specific advice are instantly useful. You can just know something about your champion and use it at the next game, while knowing macro you have to apply it over and over. My advice to Talan would be, focus a bit more on the champion someone is playing, especially if they are an OTP, and focusing on helping them improving. That said, let's finally go to Royal. Royal didn't really give me any champion specific advice, but he fully recognized my playstyle and helped me to play it better. He didn't make me feel like I had to change anything, only that I needed to be more aware. He explained to me when dying is not a big issue, when dying is actually inting, and how to play aggressively while still respecting tempo and objectives. Overall, he gave me favor total tips, but that ones that he gave me were very impactful. It made me understand when going 1v2 versus the enemy ADC is fine, even if I die, because of the waste of time that I gave my team, and when it's actually a huge mistake. I appreciate that he was more like a big brother instead of being like a strict teacher. I still have to give him a 7 out of 10 because I feel like Talan provided slightly more, especially number wise. But anyways, that said, I really enjoyed talking to Royal. From his videos, He looked way more selfish, but this proves something important. Never judge someone by their content, because they might be actually way better when you know them. Now let's move on explanation quality, something I didn't even expected to rate. But trust me, it matters. Kerxx, for example, is extremely detailed, sometimes honestly way too detailed. Everything he says is correct, but he explains it in a very technical way. For people who don't know English well, like me, it can be hard. To give you an example, instead of saying water, he might say H2O, which means water anyways, but it's way harder to understand. I'm over exaggerating at this point, of course, but it's just for giving an example on how hard his details are. Anyways, I would still give him a 9 out of 10 because the knowledge he says is insane. My suggestion would be explain it once in the detailed way and then repeat it in a simpler way, in case someone is not good in English. With a call coaching, this probably wouldn't even be an issue because the guy that you are in call with is gonna probably ask you what it means. But in a video coaching, he has to go search what it means, and it's gonna waste his time and probably still not understanding completely. While Talan and Royal, on other hand, are super clear on what they say, of course less detailed but very easy to understand. In my opinion, that's a 10 out of 10 because I don't need to waste my time searching what you're meaning. I like the fact that someone is detailed, but if you don't explain it, it's gonna be just harder for someone to understand. Now let's move on game analysis style. All three analyzed my laning phase, but in different ways. Kerxx focused more on champion mechanics, Talan gave advice I disagree with, and Royal said the complete opposite of Talan and gave advice that I agree with. All three started from jungle tracking, and all three gave warding advice, but Kerxx and Royal gave a deep warding advice, while Talan gave a standard warding advice. Deep warding means in the enemy jungle close to the red buff or to the blue buff, meanwhile standard wards are the ones that help you even from mid lane ganks. Mid game, all three focused on towers, rotation and objectives, which tells you that this is probably the correct macro approach. Late game, Kerxx prefers invades and deep vision before Baron, while Talan prefers constant laning pressure, and Royer prefers abusing champions' power for get some picks. Different styles, same goals, going for Baron and towers. I personally agree more with Royal and Talan here. Invading is more a jungle job, but you can still cover him, to be fair. Let's move on overall thoughts and suggestions. For Kerxx, I'd love to see a full coaching from him, and I recommend Discord calls and slightly simple language, but overall he covers everything. Talan has an amazing communication and attention to details. I'd recommend recording the coaching and using a pen to highlight mistakes, and also add champion specific advice. He's honestly my favorite content creator and his price is criminally underrated. Royal, same advice, record the session and review the replays beforehand, especially for the price. With preparation, he could give even better advice. That said, just being in call with him was super enjoyable, unexpectedly chill, keep it up. Anyways, now let's move on quality price and is it worth it? So, Kerxx price is 30 euro with a zoo, which is totally fair in my opinion for his knowledge, and 50 euros without it. Slightly high for the game, even if the knowledge is worth it, but the game isn't. For Talan is around 21 euro for coaching, which is an insane value, is easily worth at least 30 euro, like Kerxx. And for Royal is 64 euro, which feels like overpaying unless the coaching is extremely detailed and prepared. That said, he gave me an extra session which balanced it out. But to be fair, I'm not sure he would give an extra session to someone that has actually need to be coached. Now that we know all that, let's give a final answer. Who is the best? There is no single best coach. For example, Kerxx has an overall knowledge and champion mastery that the others didn't seem like having, while Talan had a detailed macro improvement, which is really good for improving over time and getting really high ranks. And Royal has a really good playstyle adaptation and discussion. So if you need to be better at your playstyle and you want to hold that type of playstyle, he's probably the one that is gonna give you the best discussion over it and talking about it and holding your playstyle. So that said, they are all great. Would I do it again? Probably not. Would I recommend it? Yes, of course, as a one-time experience in my opinion. But before ending the video, I want to give a huge thanks to today's sponsor, theyr. theyr sponsored this project and made this entire coaching review possible. And here's the cool part about it. If this video reaches 1000 views and 100 likes, theyr will help me give away 3 coaching sessions, one for 3 lucky winners. You will be able to get the coaching by one of the 3 coaches I reviewed in this video. And if we go beyond expectation, there is a very good chance that theyr will also help us with extra rewards and skin or hextech case. So yeah, support the video, share it, and let's see how far we can push it. To participate, all you have to do is comment with coach you would like to get coached with and why we should choose you for the coaching. I won't choose the winner myself, the comments with the most likes will win. Of course, one for each coach. Once again, thanks to theyr for the support, and thank you guys for watching the video, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye!